Member of the Subcommittee on Oversight, the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Ivey, for his questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Landrum, let me pick up where Chairman Bishop left off with respect to responding to these drone incursions. And I suppose they don't actually necessarily need to cross the border just for reconnaissance. They could be on the other side of the border and still, depending on whatever camera capability they have, get whatever information they need without crossing the line. But let me ask you this. What kind of countermeasures, I think that's what Chairman Bishop was getting at, do we have the capability to actually respond? If my math was like, I guess around 30 incursions a day, something like that with drones that you all were detecting with what you had put up, do we have the ability to respond to those in some way or, take them down or, I don't know if it has to be an intercept, actually, but you mentioned the decoding piece, which apparently they've got the ability to prevent that. But what capabilities do we have to defend ourselves against those kinds of incursions?
Congressman, I don't know the current numbers today, but I can tell you that when I retired from Laredo Sector as the Chief Patrol Agent there at that time, I can tell you that at that time we had 2 devices that we could utilize to cover 177 miles. Each device covers about 1 kilometer in each direction. So you can extrapolate the math from that. It's very difficult to get in the path and to actually mitigate something when you have so few resources to be able to do it. All of that being said, I do think it is super important for this body to understand that getting a complete picture of domain awareness down at the border, so utilizing track, detect, and identify to see every drone at the border, that part is extremely challenging. And without additional technology to the border, in addition to the RF that's available today, but going to complete RF to detect all drones and radar to detect drones that are not emitting a radio frequency signal, and camera to be able to slew to cue that camera to provide that information to the end user, all of that is necessary.
Let me follow up on that. So if I'm hearing you right, you have a single device, this is 1.5 years ago, that would cover 1 kilometer each way, I think you're saying. How much would one of those devices cost? What's it called? What's that device called?
They're just generally referred to as mitigation devices. It depends company by company.
And they're also drones?
No, they are not drones.
Okay, what are they?
They are radio frequency jamming capabilities.
And they have to be devices that go up into the air to do that?
And their range is about 1 kilometer, 1.2.
How much does each one of those cost?
Rough order of magnitude, you could get them from our company as cheap as $50,000 for some mobile devices, and then for some other devices that are available, they could range anywhere from $250,000 up to $800,000 per device.
Let me ask you what's being done. I see I'm running out of time, but what's being done in Israel and Ukraine with respect to intercepting drones?
It's still the same technologies of radio frequency jamming, and in some of those cases, they actually utilize, when it comes to mitigation, they'll use what's called kinetic mitigation, which could be something as simple as shooting an AK-47 at the drone that they visually see with their eye.
All right, and well, geez, I'm running out of time, but I wanted to actually follow up with Mr. Berto about the procurement process, because I've heard variations of this with respect to other types of technology and how to accelerate it. Because especially in the instance where you have long-term contracts that are, say, 3 years or 5 years or something along those lines, and while that contract is running, someone develops a new technology that could actually perform that function better, but they've run into trouble convincing, could be the Department of Defense, I don't mean to pick on them, but whatever the government agency is, to terminate the contract or do something in order to integrate the new technology and use that. Has that been your experience, and are there ways to try and address that so we can integrate the new technology that's available? And then a variation of that, way back in the day on the software piece, when the government was having trouble with that, they went with off the shelf, I think it was GAO or something that did it. Is there a variation of that where, we got commercially available, in this instance, drones? I guess this is a list of commercial companies that are making drones. I'm not sure, but is there a variation of that where we could the government becomes, instead of a procurement through the RFP process, which takes forever, as you pointed out, we just do more of an off-the-shelf approach to purchasing these drones or countermeasures?
First of all, Ranking Member Ivey, it is a very common problem that a contract in a realm of technology development can become obsolete pretty quickly. And that's not the fault of anybody, but it is a natural result of you tend to buy under contract that which you bought before. The starting point of any renewal contract is basically the old contract that you had in place. So it takes a lot of effort for the government to do kind of the market research to say, what can we do beyond that? There's three things you can do to help fix that. Number one is better market research, and we've urged the government to do that market research not only before the solicitation, before the request goes out for bids, but as they're evaluating the bids. So, a year after you've developed the solicitation, you're evaluating these bids. Take a look at what the market can do now, not what it could do 2 years ago when you did your market research. So that's the first thing. The second thing is actually, as I mentioned earlier, focus on the outcomes and the results you want. If you write that into your contract, it's a lot easier to modify the contract to get what you need as technology evolves rather than have to scrap it and start all over again.
And give me third?
And the third thing is you need the support of the leadership of the agency to be able to do that. When I mentioned the Joint Rapid Acquisition Council in DOD, it had the strong support of the Secretary of Defense. It had all the people in the room who could waive whatever regulations they needed to waive so you could get that. You can't do that for everything, but you can do it for the most important things.
Well, let me thank the chair for his indulgence in allowing me to run over, and I would ask, as you've offered, for you to provide additional written information about how we can go about integrating that approach, and thank you.
We'll be happy to do that, sir. Thank you.
Gentleman yields. I knew not to interrupt Mr. Bertog because he's married to a Louisiana woman. I don't want to get fussed at.